Scott Ritter is a former United States Marine Corps intelligence officer and United Nations weapons inspector. He is best known for his role in the inspections in Iraq following the first Gulf War, which were part of the efforts to ensure Iraq's compliance and disarmament mandates. Ritter was a critique of the United States policy toward Iraq in the period leading up to the Iraq War in 2003, arguing that Iraq had been effectively disarmed and that the war was unnecessary. After his tenure as a weapons inspector, Ritter became a commentator on military and international affairs. Is this correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. Awesome. So lately we've been watching a lot of interviews with you, Scott. I know I've been very, very busy. People like to hear what you think about what's going on as a great commentator, great analyst about the war. And I just want to start by saying that I see that lately you have been a big critique of Israel in general and the way Israel is doing right now, even though you used to be a fan. I watched one of your interviews, you said that you think the Jews deserves a Jewish state in the Holy Land, but not on the expense of the Palestinians. But this and what's happening now will lead to Israel getting swamped. That's what you said. I'm quoting what you said. How will it get swamped? I just want to know, how do you think Israel will get swamped? And is it even possible in the near future for Israel to be swamped? Will Israel always remain the dominant player in the Middle East? What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, just demographics alone dictate that Israel cannot be the dominant player in and of itself. 9 million Jews does not give you the demographic ability to dominate hundreds of millions of Arabs. So swamp is what happens when 100 million people make 9 million disappear. Now, that's not what I'm advocating. I don't want that. I believe that should not ever be allowed. And to be honest, while there might be a handful of people in the Islamic community that seek that kind of revenge on Israel, my limited knowledge of Islam is that it is a religion of peace, and that it advocates the peaceful coexistence of people of the book. So the notion that Muslims are inherently programmed to kill Jews is just stupid. It's just frankly wrong. The problem isn't Judaism. The problem is Zionism, and political Zionism. And political Zionism can only exist if Israel is backed by the collective strength of the Western world, in particular the United States. The United States is the guarantor of political Zionism. And so when you take a look at what's happening right now, Israel is in the process of losing the support of the United States. For the first time ever, we're seeing massive demonstrations in the streets of the United States, not in support of Israel, but in support of Palestine. And these demonstrations, in many cases, take a sympathetic approach towards Hamas even, and an understanding of what happened on October 7th and why it happened. And I think there's also an appreciation of the goals and objectives of the October 7th operation. It wasn't designed to drive Israel into the sea. It was a very clever operation designed, I believe, to achieve three things. The creation of conditions necessary for the creation of a Palestinian state, a legitimate Palestinian state, not the fake Palestinian state that Israel's been trying to sell to the Palestinian people and stuff, as we see in the Abraham Accord. That's not a Palestinian state. That's a joke. That's a travesty. A genuine Palestinian state, at a minimum along the lines envisioned by the Oslo Accords, a two-state solution, 1967 borders, but even that was an Israeli dictated outcome. A real Palestinian state I think has to take into account the 1948 borders, and and things of that nature. But that's a political discussion. That's a political discussion that's going to be had by people moving in that direction. But we're talking about it now because of October 7th. This is the important thing.
That's awesome, because that was my second question. If you were the leader of Hamas before October 7th, would you have ordered to perform the October 7th operation? So this was like a master plan, in your own opinion, that was planned by Hamas?
I believe this was a masterful plan planned by Hamas. They made one strategic error. One strategic error. I think it's common knowledge that the Hamas fighters are extraordinarily well disciplined. They're very capable. They're very religious. They're very disciplined. When you're at war, there will be horrific consequences of war. And there was no way Hamas could launch the attack it did without Israeli civilians being caught up in the crossfire. But even the Israeli army acknowledges that the majority of the atrocities that took place on October 7th were not committed by Hamas. They were committed by
the IDF soldiers,
enraged civilians. There was you have the crossfire, the overreaction of the Israeli forces, but you also have a situation where Hamas came through the barrier, and behind them came less disciplined forces who had revenge on their mind. They weren't part of the planning of the operation. They were reacting based upon an opportunity. And these are people who had been bombed, tortured, arrested, beat, and there was hate in their hearts. Hamas launched the attack not with hate in their hearts, but with the discipline of a military force carrying out a military mission. But these follow-on echelons came out, and they, I believe, committed many atrocities. And Hamas's strategic mistake was not to have people controlling the entry into Israel, to have Hamas forces there telling these undisciplined people, no, you shall not come in here. I think that was a mistake because it has diluted the impact of Hamas's military achievements by giving Israel the ability to carry out a counter-propaganda campaign that highlights genuine instances of abuses, of atrocities carried out by Palestinian gunmen coming from Gaza, that Israel has been able to say this was Hamas. It wasn't Hamas. Hamas performed in a very disciplined fashion. I'm not saying they didn't kill Israeli civilians, but they didn't seek out the murder of Israeli civilians. And many of the Israeli civilians who died, as you pointed out, died because they were caught up in a crossfire between Hamas fighters and Israeli fighters, and also not just Hamas fighters, but many of these non-Hamas militants who went in there got trapped in Israel. They were taking hostages. They got trapped in the various kibbutzes and military encampments. They didn't have the discipline to withdraw back into Gaza. So they were trapped with hostages, and the Israeli force came in and killed them. And when you look at the dead fighters, they said, these are Hamas. They weren't Hamas. They were other militants, people from different factions, or just civilians who took up a gun. But that's, I think, was the mistake of Hamas. This was a very well-planned, well-executed military operation. They should have foreseen that there would have been a surge of hate-filled emotion coming out of Gaza to take advantage of the holes that appeared in the fence. And they should have done something to stop that.
So, from your point of view, what Hamas did from a military point of view is good. They did a good job, excellent job. But they made a mistake of not controlling the extra mobs, whatever you want to call them, the people who just came after that. So,
yeah, because if you're a military commander is responsible for everything that happens in their area of operations, everything that happens. When you take control of an area, when you initiate an operation, you are in charge, and you have to take responsibility. Just like if I were a Marine who took over a neighborhood, I am responsible not only for defeating the enemy forces arrayed before me, but securing the welfare of the civilians that are in that neighborhood. I must ensure that I have a methodology to prevent looting, to prevent robbery, rape, murder. I'm responsible. And if I don't do that, then it's my fault. So 100%. Hamas has to own this.
Okay, so yeah, go ahead.
It's a minor debating point. The point is, generally speaking, what Hamas did on October 7th is one of the greatest military operations in modern history.
So let's say that in an alternative universe, Hamas actually took control over the people who came with them, the mobs. Do you and we didn't see the number of civilians got killed in Israel, or all that too much propaganda material inducing propaganda. Do you think Israel would have reacted the same way they have reacted now?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't matter.
Because they were humiliated.
Yes, they got humiliated. Exactly.
And I also believe that, and again, Hamas can speak for itself. This is my assessment. I believe Hamas always intended for Israel to react the way it did. This is part of the trap. Mm-hmm. Hamas cannot win politically unless they get the world to change their opinion about Israel. The world will not change their opinion about Israel unless Israel slaughters the Palestinian people. Israel, since 2006, has articulated a policy, the Dahiwa principle, named after the suburb of West Beirut, that they flattened in 2006 as a way of collective punishment for the successful resistance of Hezbollah. Israel has said that it is our policy to hold the civilian populations accountable for the actions of those organizations who are opposing us. So against Hezbollah, they flattened Beirut. They flattened a variety of towns. They collectively punished the civilian population. In 2008, they turned the Dahiwa principle against Gaza for the first time, and they've used it against Gaza 2008, 2010, 2014, 2018, 2020, 2021. They've bombed the civilian population. It's what Israel does. And so Hamas, I believe, lured Israel into a trap by humiliating their military, by inflicting this tremendous defeat, it's an absolute humiliation against Israel. They knew that Israel would respond by bombing the civilian population. Now, some people will say that's cold-hearted on the part of Hamas. You know, Charles de Gaulle in 1944 was approached by the military command, Dwight Eisenhower and others, and said, we're going to liberate France. We're going to launch an attack on Normandy. Mm-hmm. But to do this, we are going to have to bomb areas where there are French civilians. We will be killing a lot of French civilians. And Charles de Gaulle said, how many? They said tens of thousands. He said, they must die in the interest of liberty.
For the big
60,000 French civilians were killed during the Normandy campaign. 60,000. Because that is the price that has to be paid for liberation.
For the Palestinian
Hamas
state.
understands that there must be a price paid by the Palestinian people if Gaza is to be liberated from Israeli oppression. And so the Palestinian people are the true heroes of this conflict.
Of course.
Because they are standing, they are suffering, but they are not yielding. They are not surrendering. They are there, and their continued presence is frustrating for Israel. Israel wants to evict them all from Gaza, wants to kick them out, but they won't be kicked out.
Yeah.
It's tragic. It's horrible, but I think it's one of these horrible necessities of life that if there is going to be a free Palestine, an independent Palestine, it can only be built on the blood of the martyrs who are being sacrificed in that cause.
So do you think Egypt's position and Jordan's position to refuse the displacement of Palestinians through the whole thing was, in a way, they did the right thing to do? That was the right thing to do, just to allow for a Palestinian state in the future? Because if that was the plan of Israel, to push them all out, and they said no, we're not gonna allow that, so maybe it works for the bigger plan.
I'm not going to give Egypt and Jordan the benefit of the doubt, because neither Egypt nor Jordan have ever expressed sympathy for a Palestinian state. They've cooperated with Israel for the continued punishment of the Palestinians. the credit goes to Hamas, who knows the Egyptians and knows the Jordanians better than most. They knew just like they knew how Israel would respond. They could anticipate what Egypt and Jordan would do, and they would use that to their advantage. They knew that Egypt would not open up the gates and allow millions of Gazans to displace there. They knew that Jordan would not allow the Palestinians from Gaza to come to Jordan. This isn't because Egypt and Jordan are sympathetic to the Hamas cause, the exact opposite. Egypt and Jordan are opposed to Hamas. But Hamas, their leadership has been very politically astute, and they knew how Egypt and Jordan would respond. They've used the behavior of Egypt and Jordan against Egypt and Jordan on the benefit of Hamas, just like they used how they knew Israel would overreact to their benefit. So look, Hamas is winning this thing politically. There's been a sea change in global opinion, and it's all because of what Hamas has done.
So it was a master plan after all, like it seems so, till now.
The proof is in the pudding. You never want to count your chickens before they hatch. You don't want to spike the football until you get in the end zone.
Exactly.
So it's too early for Hamas to do a victory dance. But what I would say is that when you look at what the plan appears to be, and remember, Hamas's objectives are very limited. The creation of a Palestinian state. They're not talking about the destruction of Israel. The creation of a Palestinian state, the freedom of 5,000 plus Palestinians held prisoner by Israel, and the restoration of Muslim control over Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is what Hamas is looking to accomplish. These are very achievable objectives, and I believe Hamas is going to achieve all three of them by the time this campaign is done. So it is a genius campaign. They haven't tried to, it's like a space program early on where you say, our very first space launch, we're going to the moon. You're not.
I see what you're saying.
Space launch is you're going to go up and come down.
Exactly. One step at a time.
Very realistic.
Yes, one step at a time.
They're very realistic of what they can achieve here. And because they've been realistic about that, they're going to achieve it. And look what they've done. Look what they've done. They have told Hezbollah and Iran, don't intervene.
Awesome, yeah.
Because you see, a larger conflict is not good for Hamas. A larger conflict means that Hamas becomes a minor player in a regional war. And Hamas's goals and objectives are no longer number one priority of the world. It becomes, how do we stop a war with Iran? How do we stop a war with Hezbollah? Those become the priorities. And Hamas doesn't want that to happen. So they have prepared for this long conflict. And they have told Hezbollah and they have told Iran, we don't need you to intervene. Now, what Hezbollah has done, because this is, whether Hamas wants it or not, understand that by creating this geopolitical disruption with Israel, you create problems throughout the Middle East. This is resonating everywhere, in Lebanon, in Iran, in Saudi Arabia, in Egypt, in Jordan, everywhere. Hezbollah has to take into account that they are a resistance organization that has talked openly about supporting Hamas. So Hezbollah needs to manage escalation. There is a desire on many who want Hezbollah to intervene, who believe now is the time for Hezbollah to intervene. Hezbollah can't intervene because it destroys what Hamas is trying to accomplish. But Hezbollah cannot be silent. And so you see this escalation management taking place as both Hezbollah and Israel trade military attacks, but it's designed to relieve the pressure on both Israel and Hezbollah. It's not designed to explode. The same thing with Iran. Iran is managing the pressure relief in Iraq and in Syria with the Shia militias attacking American bases. But neither the United States nor Iran want this to explode into a major war. So it's escalation management, trying to hold back the pressure while everybody focuses on solving the problem that Hamas has created with regard to Palestine.
So when you talk about balancing the attacks on all these players, that means the status quo is what all of them want, and I'm talking about the players like Israel, Iran, Iran's militias, Hezbollah. Why do you want to keep it like that? Why do you enjoy doing this little skirmish everywhere and every now and then? Like, what's the goal after all of that if the goal is not to destroy the enemy?
Well, again, Hamas's goal is not to destroy the enemy.
That's Hamas. But how about the other ones, like Iran and Iran's militias?
Iran's goal was not to destroy Israel. Iran and Hezbollah were taken by surprise here. They weren't coordinated. Hassan Nasrallah has said that. We weren't told what was happening. We were taken by surprise. It wasn't until October 9th that we could begin to respond to what was happening. But he also said that we talked to Hamas and they said, we have this under control. We have a plan. We have this under control. But there's emotions. Anytime Palestinians and Israelis are engaged in a conflict, especially one where you have overwhelming casualties on the part of the Palestinians, there will be a tremendous amount of outrage amongst the Arab population or amongst the Muslim population. Outrage, and this outrage has to be controlled. You can't make it go away because it exists. So it has to be controlled, and that's what's happening with the attacks on the American bases in Syria and in Iraq. It's being managed. They attack them. We don't overreact. You notice we respond with our own attacks. Then they attack, we respond. The idea is to slow it down, not to allow it to blow up, because if we attack overwhelmingly, we could end up in a war with Iran. Iran doesn't want a war with the United States. Iran doesn't want a war with Israel. Iran, if everybody recalls, is looking forward to a future of economic prosperity. Iran just made good with Saudi Arabia through a Chinese brokered rapprochement. Iran is looking for a diplomatic solution, not a military solution. Iran is working for a ceasefire in Yemen. Iran is trying to stabilize the situation in Lebanon and in Syria. So Iran's not looking for a fight with Israel. This took them by surprise. So Iran's focus, remember, they joined BRICS. That's not a military alliance, that's an economic alliance. Right. They're members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. That's an economic organization. Iran's future is to break free of the chains of sanctions that have been imposed on Iran, to liberate their economy and allow the Iranian people to prosper. Any government that doesn't look out for the prosperity of their people is a bad government. The Iranian government is not a bad government, and they're not going to sacrifice the prosperity of the Iranian people for, a Hamas provocation that Hamas didn't even talk to them about. The same thing with Hassan Nasrallah. Hezbollah is a political party, not just a movement of resistance. It is a political party that is committed to the betterment of Lebanon, the entirety of Lebanon. Why would Hassan Nasrallah throw that all away, all the work that Hezbollah has done in the course of the past decades to legitimize themselves as a political party in the eyes of the Lebanese people, to be seen as a party that is beneficial to all Lebanese? Why would he throw that away by attacking Israel blindly and opening Lebanon up to be destroyed the same way Gaza is being destroyed? That is not good leadership. That is bad leadership. Hassan Nasrallah has never been accused of being a bad leader. He is a good leader. So Hassan Nasrallah, together with Ibrahim Raisi in Iran, are working on escalation management, how to control all of this
chaos,
proclivity for violence, how to keep it under control so that Hamas can win their victory. If any of these things blow up, I can guarantee you that if Hezbollah comes across the border and invades Israel and there's a major war there, we will not be talking about Gaza anymore. We will not be talking about a Palestinian state. We will be talking about a larger conflict that gets into the existential survival of Israel. And that's a completely different debate. One of the reasons why Hamas can prevail on the global community right now is that they're talking about the creation of a Palestinian state. The world supports this. But the moment this becomes about the destruction of Israel, the world will not support this. So it's imperative to stay focused on the mission.
I like that. So that's why, because Nasrallah's last speech, a lot of people thought it was a little moderate and almost selfish, especially in the Middle Eastern community. You called it a genius speech that's gonna go down in history as a genius speech.
Genius speech.
So, from your point of view, is it genius just because it's focused on the main goal of Hamas, which is the Palestinian state, or is it genius because it's gonna allow Nasrallah to live longer, to remain Hezbollah to stay for longer?
think Hezbollah has shown and has earned its spurs, so to speak, as a resistance movement. And if anybody thinks that Hezbollah exists for selfish reasons like that, then they don't understand Hezbollah. Hezbollah is a resistance organization. Its fighters are extraordinarily well disciplined, and they've shown a willingness to sacrifice themselves in support of a cause worthy of that sacrifice. Okay? Hassan Nasrallah did not say that defending Hamas is not worthy of Hezbollah's sacrifice. In fact, he has said that if Hamas is threatened with destruction, then Hezbollah will intervene. There will be a larger war. But he is not a man who is going to allow emotion to interfere with good policy. Hamas has defined a conflict. Hamas defined it, not Hezbollah. Hamas is the one who has determined what they want to achieve and how they're going to achieve it. And Hamas has said, we don't need you to intervene. Who is Hezbollah then to say, we don't care what you want, Hamas, we're going to intervene? Who is Hezbollah to say that? You can't be more Palestinian than the Palestinians.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay? And the same thing with Iran. Who is Iran to tell the Palestinian people, look, you are on the cusp of finally getting a Palestinian state, but because we are insulted by what Israel is doing, we will undo all of that to create a larger war where there will never be a Palestinian state. No. Hassan Nasrallah is a genius because he has taken an extremely complicated situation where the average human who is filled with outrage, if you remember the the fists are clenched.
Yeah.
I forget.
You can tell. Yeah.
Fists are clenched, tears down the face.
Yeah.
About the deaths that are happening. This was Vladimir Putin. Mm-hmm. Vladimir Putin, the most rational actor. Fists are clenched, tears because of the death of the Palestinian children. Who wouldn't want to intervene? Mm-hmm. But you have to be responsible. You have to pull back from the emotions and look at the reality of what you want to be the outcome to be. The best outcome for the Middle East is not the destruction of Israel, but the destruction of political Zionism.
Exactly.
The best outcome is not, the promotion of a Palestinian state that replaces Israel as the occupier, as the hated. If it's Muslims oppressing Jews, that is bad. That is as bad as Jews oppressing Muslims. The best outcome is where Muslims and Jews can live together in peace in the Holy Land, whether it's a two-state solution or a single-state solution. That's not up for me to say. That's up for negotiators. But also one where Hassan Nasrallah and Hezbollah can continue to be good members of the Lebanese community, political community, looking out for the welfare of Lebanon, not turning their back on. How selfish is it for Hassan Nasrallah to say, I choose to attack Israel, knowing that the Lebanese people will pay the price? That's very selfish. Instead, he's saying, I am a Lebanese politician. I am somebody who cares about Lebanon. Hamas is a political party, not just a resistance movement. How selfish is it of Ibrahim Raisi to tell the Iranian people, after they have suffered for decades under economic sanctions, at the moment of their economic liberation, at the moment that he's ready to fulfill the promise he's made for many, many years, that the Iranian government has made to the people, that we are going to rise on our feet and we will restore ourselves economically, that sanctions did not defeat us. How selfish would it be to throw it all away because he wants to feel good about sending missiles against Israel? That's bad leadership. Hassan Nasrallah, Ibrahim Raisi, I think, have emerged as very good leaders. And the fact that the people who criticize them are those articulating for violence should tell you everything. Right. If Islam is indeed a religion of peace, and I believe it is. Look, war is war. War is a human condition. Humans are fallible. Humans make the mistakes. Religion can be abused by humans, misused for any number of causes. I condemn Al-Qaeda for perverting the cause of Islam in support of what they've done. If you want to live in peace, you have to have the maturity to live in peace, meaning you avoid the temptations of war where at all possible. Right now, there is a horrible war being waged between Israel and Hamas. That war must play itself out. But there's no reason, there's no need to bring war upon war upon war.
Well, like you said before, emotions run high in Arabic community or whatever. So that's why the feelings of revenge, they just come on the surface very quickly. But like you said, when you sit back a little, when you sit back a little and you just think about the bigger picture, emotions will go down, and the mind shall prevail, right? The logic. I want to go to the next point, which is Saudi Arabia. What do you think will be Saudi Arabia's next move? Do you think there will ever be normalization now? And are they gonna tell Israel, hey Israel, like now you messed up. We're not gonna normalize with you. That was your main goal, unless you have a Palestinian state. Or you think Saudi Arabia is doing something under the table right now?
I think, first of all, we have to understand that Saudi Arabia, like all other Arab nations, looks out for themselves first and foremost. There are no supporters of the Palestinian cause. There are no genuine, in the Arab world, there are no genuine supporters of the Palestinian cause. There are people who pay lip service to it, but they use it for their own benefit. They'll pretend to be supporting the Palestinians insofar as it benefits their political objectives. But the irony is, I mean, and even the two nations that are staunch advocates for the Palestinian cause, Lebanon and Iran. You know, one is a Persian state, both are Shia states. Palestinian state would probably be primarily Sunni in nature. So, so we need to start off by understanding that Saudi Arabia is not a friend of the Palestinian people. They are not a friend. If they were a friend, there'd be a Palestinian state today. The Arab world could have helped make a Palestinian state if they threw their weight behind the Palestinian cause, but they've used they've used the issue of Israel and that conflict to serve their own interests, to create a division with the United States, complexity of the United States. Remember, today we talk about the United States being controlled by the pro-Israeli lobby,
the Zionists.
And it is. But there was a time back in the 80s, in the early 90s, when there was a strong Arabist lobby, a very strong Arabist lobby. And there was a conflict in the United States between the pro-Arabs and the pro-Israelis in terms of policy domination. And many of the Arab states were playing off that conflict to get the United States. Why do you think the United States provides Saudi Arabia with so many weapons?
Right.
It was linked to early on, it was linked to an agreement that as we supported Israel, we would support Saudi Arabia, that we would maintain some sort of relative balance. If you remember back in the 1970s, I believe, early 80s, the discussion about the AWACS aircraft, to provide AWACS to Saudi Arabia. Then we provided F-15s to Saudi Arabia. Israel was not happy about that. It's a balancing act being played off, and Saudi Arabia uses this to gain its own. Egypt's defense aid from the United States is linked to the defense aid we provide to Israel. So none of the Arab countries support Palestine. They use Palestine. Jordan is afraid of Palestine because of the number of Palestinian refugees in Jordan. Remember Black September. Black September, of course, was when King Hussein of Jordan turned the Jordanian army on the Palestinian refugee camps in Jordan to destroy Fatah. So so Saudi Arabia is looking out for Saudi Arabia. That's the bottom line. But Saudi Arabia has to deal with political realities. And the current political reality is that the sentiment for a Palestinian state is prevalent. So Saudi Arabia has to incorporate that. Saudi Arabia also has to play to the reality that there's deep resentment in the Arab world towards Israel, that the Abraham Accord was premised on Israel learning to peacefully coexist with its Arab neighbors, to bring Israeli economic capabilities to join up with the Arab nation, to create a Sunni Israeli bulwark against the axis of resistance. That was the whole purpose of rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Israel. It was an American plan to bring Israel into the Gulf Arab nation coalition, standing up against the expansion of Iran. The Chinese threw a monkey wrench into that through the rapprochement, but the United States was still the rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, but the United States was still brokering it. And up until on October 6th, everybody was talking about how Saudi Arabia and Israel were moving towards reconciliation. Everybody was. No one's talking about that today. No. On October 6th, everybody was talking about the India-Middle East Economic Corridor that would link Mumbai through the United Arab Emirates, through Saudi Arabia, across to Jordan, into Israel, onto Europe. Benjamin Netanyahu
was so proud of it,
Yeah, he instead of bringing up his cartoon bomb of the Iranian bomb trying to scare everybody, he brought up his cartoon map of how Israel is going to be the dominant player, and this is the new direction. Yeah. Nobody's talking about that today. Those days are done. The Abrams Accord, so painstakingly implemented by the Trump administration and sustained by the Biden administration, is dead in the water. Saudi Arabia today has made it clear that there can be no rapprochement with Israel, no normalization with Israel until there's a Palestinian state. And that's the direction they're having. Now, here's the danger. Remember when I talked about the danger of escalation? Mm-hmm. If Iran were to get involved, the entire focus would shift to how to repair relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Nobody would talk about a Palestinian state, and there will never be a Palestinian state. So if you believe in a Palestinian state, understand that what Hamas has done, this is the genius of Hamas. Hamas has trapped Saudi Arabia. Hamas has trapped Egypt. Hamas has trapped Jordan. They've trapped all of the Arab world that has been opposed to a genuine Palestinian state because it doesn't serve their interests. They need a Palestinian state. They need the conflict between Palestine and Israel as a way of weakening Israel. The Abrams Accord was a compromise on the part of these Arab nations that allowed Israel to define a Palestinian state in a way that there would never be a Palestinian state. There's not a single advocate of Palestine who looks at the Abrams Accord and says, yep, that's the Palestinian state we want.
It's completely against it. Yeah. You can. It's 100% for Israel.
So Israel had turned the table and compromised all of these already compromised Arab states to move past Palestine. What Hamas has done is dragged everybody back and forced them to deal with the reality of a Palestinian state. That's the genius of it. And Saudi Arabia is now trapped in this. And Hamas must keep them trapped. You can trap an animal, but if you allow the animal to escape, it's useless. They've trapped the animal of Saudi Arabia. They have to keep Saudi Arabia trapped, focused on a Palestinian state so that there will be a Palestinian state. And then you release Saudi Arabia. But it's important that Hamas maintain control of this, and they need the help of Hezbollah and Iran not to escalate. Saudi Arabia is doing things that are inherently contradictory. Believe me, Saudi Arabia would run away from the Palestinian cause the first chance they got. The first chance they got, they would run away from that and go back to the direction they were heading, because that's what they want. They can't run away because
they're trapped. They're trapped now with Hamas. Hamas did a great job. Okay, I get it. So I want to ask you about something. You mentioned the Zionist lobby in the U.S. and the Zionists.
Okay. Before this video to continue, I would like to say a few things. My name is Ahmed Darwish. I am the co-founder of Allah.com, Muhammad.com, Moscow.com. I have translated the Holy Quran with my wife and Khadijah from Bristol. I lived in America over 30 years. I was working with Muhammad Ali Islamic Foundation. I have the largest Islamic English shelf of over 300 books. You can download it from Allah.com, Muhammad.com. And we have also 200 plus bookshelf in Indonesian language, plus 15 reference in 108 languages. These sites were registered before Google. I'm aware of most of what Scott Ritter is saying, but he's so beautiful in expressing it. So, what is in it for me here? Why I'm posing this? Because he reminds me of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he spoke about that the body, when part of it gets sick, a limb of it gets sick, the rest of the body start feeling sick too. And the Islamic nation, the Arabs and the non-Arabs, the whole 1.2 billions and more, they are off track of the spirit of Islam. They are trapped into nationalistic views and going after capitalism where making profit is number one, including the Islamic organization, Islamic community centers, and the imams and the teachers, all these guys. I give you one example. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he spoke average one hadith a day. 8,000, say 500 hadith, authentic. The Azhar University teaches 25 hadith a year to produce a scholar. Do you believe that? Nobody is studying the 8,000 hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Riyadh al-Salihin by Imam Nawawi, very famous book. It has like quarter of the hadith of the Prophet. We translate it and we release it. And Khadijah recorded. You will see this in the second session of this recording. So what I'm trying to do, once you understand what Scott said today about government, about individual, look at them as a sick body and need healing. And the healing, both material and spiritual, comes from our guide. We have only one guide. Believe me, the Prophet ﷺ, Allah sent him guide, Hadiyan. He is our Hadi, ﷺ. If you believe in Prophet Muhammad, you get his guidance. If you don't take his guidance, he's screwed up. Okay? No free lunch. So we have a book of all the authentic hadith of the Prophet. We have the Riyadh al-Salihin in 100 languages. So you take the hadith and you take the Quran. Now when to come to the Quran, most of non-Arab don't know the meaning of Quran. They read it without meaning because the system of education is a stupid, bad system. So the Pakistani or Indonesian kid, if he read the Quran from beginning to the end without meaning, they feel he's accomplished a blessing. No, he's an ignorant of Quran person, even if you memorize it by heart. So what I did, I got all the words of Quran, about 60,000, without repetition, about 14,000, and I made, which is like 28%, I made beautiful word for word system where you can study it in a few years. If you do just like a verse or two a day, you will understand the Quran. As a matter of fact, it's like a phonetic lab of like 8 hours. You will know all the meaning of Quran, all the words of Quran, word for word in Arabic, English, and Indonesian, and so forth. So what I'm trying to tell you, I want you to follow Prophet Muhammad and use this consultant, Scott Ritter, as the one give you the pure, honest advice. As a matter of fact, I cannot find a person in the East and West, Muslim or non-Muslim, better than him. He understands everything exactly, in a very data neutral, not emotion. Okay? So, you need the guidance of the Prophet Muhammad. You need to start practicing, especially dhikrullah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You want also to be warned of the Wahhabis in their different phases. These people believe in the wasan al-jihah sadis al-a'la, the upper direction idol, falqiyya, and they push they already used about $70 billion to spread Wahhabism, and they went nowhere. They hide the personality of the Prophet and they took over and misguiding everybody. As a matter of fact, the nation, including the government, they are not handling everything as Scott said, because he didn't talk about the reason. I'm telling you the reason. The reason because al-khitab al-dini, the sermon style of Prophet Muhammad, was disappeared and replaced by the Wahhabi system. Okay, those same people who produced ISS, their book, they printed it in Syria, and you see the cover, Kitab al-Tawheed, the book of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, the founder of this fanatic. So what I'm saying, you want to go to the Quran, to the Hadith, the authentic biography of Prophet Muhammad by people like Khadijah-Anne, and we have all this available for you. So what I'm trying to say, you go back to only Prophet Muhammad, not any sheikh, nothing. Don't follow any sheikh who's alive or imam or anybody. Even these guys who are some nice kid, some nice guy, they will not give you Prophet Muhammad. Okay? So you put them in their place. So you have maybe Muhammad Hijab is a good guy to debate, but he is not a guide for you. Come on. So he's like a flavor. You hear to him once, not every day following. he has 1 million followers. We need Prophet Muhammad to have the 1 million followers. Okay, how? You read the Quran every day and you read the Hadith and follow it. All right. If you do that, and also you go to the boycott, you do it the right way. The right way means if a food business owned by Zionists or who support Zionists, nationalize it. So McDonald's should be McGaza. Okay. In this way, he will buy the local organic chicken instead of some chicken coming from the sea, and you have bones which is already full of germs, and you have genetically engineered and so forth. So this is the way you do. If the owner of McDonald's change it to be, because they give Happy Meals to the soldiers who's killing the children, like Bassam said, you know. So what's happening? If the owner of the franchise take the McDonald's and throw it away, the cover, the title of the shop, and put McGaza and cut the contract, then he has everything. He owns everything, and he move on. Okay, and if there is illegal, let the legal worry about it. All right, and Islamic local judges should respect that, and maybe the ruler take the right action. So what I'm trying to say, you have to move on behind Prophet Muhammad. There is no free lunch. Either you believe in Prophet Muhammad or you are unbeliever or a hypocrite or whatever it is. All right? But you will not be true believer unless you follow him. Not in the fanatic way of Wahhabis. Okay? Look at Sheikh Sha'rawi. They consider him from faith point of view unbeliever. Dr. Abd Halim Mahmoud, who led the army in the time of Sadat, was giving lecture every day in the Sinai. So I'm not going to keep it long. You go back to the Quran and Hadith, to Imam Shafi'i, who he was Mujaddid of the 2nd century, and the Prophet prophesied of him, and he has full of dalil of Quran and Hadith in his Al-Umm, which we release, alhamdulillah. So what I'm saying, I'm just interrupting here because he didn't mention the cause. Why all these guys behaving differently, and why people don't care about Hamas or Islam or this or that, or forget even about Hamas, why they don't care about Aqsa. Okay, had they went and say, listen, Aqsa is our Qibla, we need it immediately freed around it, you have your own little corner, and get this open for everybody. Then we go to the spirit of Middle Ages in Spain, where Jew, Muslim, and Christian lived in harmony, and this was a golden state, a golden age history of Spain, which they cried that they didn't have that because they were the leader in Europe. So I'll stop there, and please pay attention to the next recording.
The Israeli lobby in the US and the Arabist or the Arab lobby used to be strong in the past. How can the Arab lobby get stronger now? Do you think there's any future? Like, if you want to give a genuine advice for the people who care about the Arabic cause in general, what can they do in the US?
Well, the first thing I would say, and this pains me as an American, because I love my country and I want my country to succeed. But if I were the Arab lobby, I would be working to distance myself from the United States because we're not the solution anymore. We're the problem. And until the United States changes its outlook to the world, till we accept a multipolar world, to give you an example, Saudi Arabia, you know, the growth of the Arab or the American Arab Aramco, Arab American oil company. Yeah. It was predicated on a deal where the United States would guarantee the security of Saudi Arabia in exchange for Saudi Arabia guaranteeing the energy security of America and the world. Saudi Arabian oil production, the oil fields were overbuilt. They were built to have a capacity of, 12 million barrel a day production. Mm-hmm. But then that's maximum capacity. But then oil production is kept lower than that. Why? Because of the demand of the oil economy. When the United States needs more oil on the market, we call up Saudi Arabia and say, produce more oil.
Increase.
But when you produce more oil, the price of oil goes down. Saudi Arabia doesn't make as much money. But Saudi Arabia did this in exchange for the guarantee of security. What Saudi Arabia is recognizing is that the United States can guarantee nothing anymore, especially after our 20-year failure in the Middle East and our global war on terrorism. The United States is a much reduced military power, and that Saudi Arabia needs to look elsewhere for its security guarantees, meaning that instead of focusing on a world where America must guarantee security, why not have your security guaranteed by peaceful coexistence with your neighbors? Hence the Chinese brokered deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran to bring an end to that conflict, to that tension. Saudi Arabia is increasing the amount of oil that it's selling to China. They're selling oil in non-dollar denominations. They're walking away from the petrodollar. So Saudi Arabia is divorcing itself from the United States. Indeed, Mohammed bin Salman, the MBS, has said, that the future of Saudi Arabia is to be independent of the United States and Europe, to be stronger than in Europe. That's the direction they're heading. I think every Arab nation needs to be heading in that direction. Not to be stronger than America, but to be independent of America. That doesn't mean that you don't have to be friends with America, but the United States today is not a friend of anybody. We're not even a friend of Israel.
Really?
We're gonna turn our back on Israel like you've never seen. 2024 is a political election for Joe Biden and the Democrats who want to hold on to the White House. Right now, they're losing across the board. Swing states have large Arab
Michigan,
populations.
Michigan, yeah.
It's a very large Arab population. If Biden loses Michigan, he's not going to win the presidency. And so you're going to see that Biden is going to be turning on Israel because we're a friend of nobody. We turn on Arabs, we turn on the Israelis, we turn on the Ukrainians. Remember how good of friends we were with the Ukrainians?
Yes.
Best friends in the world.
Okay, I'm going to get in here. By the way, if the Muslims in the swing states, they should do head counts. Suppose, say for the sake of argument, you have, say, 100,000 in Michigan, but to guarantee a vote to go one way, you need only, say, 60,000. So the 40,000, if they vote, it doesn't really help. So in this case, they move the 40,000 to another swing state where they are less to control it more. So if they can do that, this will be fantastic for them to rebuttal the Jewish lobby. As a matter of fact, Jewish lobby, I know this for a fact, they don't pay any congressman more than $10,000, $20,000 each. They don't give millions, but they played their card very well.
Everybody hates Zelensky now, okay.
Yeah, but the United States only cares about the United States. We're not a friend of anybody. And I think this is the harsh reality that the Arab world needs to live in, that, first of all, there's a big world out there that doesn't include the United States. That world is learning how to deal with each other respectfully through multipolarity, through institutions like BRICS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Even the G20 is gradually being shifted away from the G7 control to be a truly global South economic entity. This is the future for the Arab world. The Arab world needs to stop allowing the United States and Israel to play the division card. We have been very good at dividing the Arab world and turning it into cliques that fight amongst themselves. It's high time the Arab world learned how to be an Arab world, a genuine Arab world that comes together for the benefit of the Arab people, of the Muslim people. And if you do that, there's a lot of Muslims in the world, man.
There's
and
a lot,
if they learn
2 billion,
how to live
yeah.
together and cooperate
It's
together,
funny, there's a lot, yeah.
They can prosper together, But
But
they let the United States divide them.
But it's hard because they've been living for too many years in this acceptance of, like you said, we're divided. I know it might take longer than just a few years for that.
All meaningful change takes time.
Of course.
It takes time. First of all, you've got to break the hold of the political elites who have enriched themselves. I mean, the oil money is a corrupting influence in the Arab world. And you've seen a stratification of Arab society, the haves and the have-nots, the people, and then like in Saudi Arabia, the princes all make all this money, and then they allow a little bit to trickle down to keep the people happy. The last time I checked, when the oil comes out of the ground, it doesn't say I belong to the Al Saud family. I mean, I guess the
of course
Al Saud family believe that, but it belongs to the Saudi Arabian people.
of course, yeah.
All tribes, all people, all should benefit from that. Not a handful of princes, but that's going to take some time to change that power structure. But how it's a journey of change. But the journey doesn't begin until you take that first step.
The first
Step is the tough one. If I've always dreamed of climbing Mount Everest. Now I'm never going to do it because I'm too old and I can't. I don't think I operate at altitude that great. But let's say I were to do it. The first step begins me stepping out of my house to the car, to the airport to fly, and then I have to take more steps. And each step, it becomes harder. The journey starts to weigh on you, and you look and you're so far away from your target that you want to quit. You always want to quit, but you keep stepping, you keep stepping, you keep stepping, you keep stepping. Sometimes insurmountable odds come in the way, an avalanche, something like that can kill you, because not all journeys are guaranteed outcome. But if you overcome them and you keep stepping, you keep stepping, you keep stepping, eventually you're on the top of the mountain and you've persevered. And
I
you
like
made
that.
the journey.
I like that. That's very good.
So,
that's very motivating. Yeah, I like that.
Anybody who's thinking that when the Arab world must come together, that sounds great, Scott, but it's going to be hard. Yes,
Of course.
every journey worth taking is hard. The harder the journey, the better the reward.
Of course. I want to get back to the war, and because everybody loves your analysis of what's going on the war. So going into the second week of the ground invasion, while reading about the heavy casualties on the IDF that are reported, we know there's a lot more than what they report, right? And based on the IDF statement that this might go actually for a whole year, do you think they're actually going to sustain their position in Gaza for a year, or it's definitely going to end before that?
Wars are war is an extension of politics by other means. This Gaza conflict will not be won militarily. That's just no war ever is won military. It's the hubris, the arrogance of the generals who believe that we are in charge of resolving this militarily, and so they have a military plan. But that plan is attached to political reality. First of all, the generals that are speaking are the generals who failed the Israeli people on October 7th. So they're already in hot water. Those generals are responsible to a political cabinet led by Benjamin Netanyahu, who failed the Israeli people on October 7th and failed them prior to that with the rewriting of the basic laws, challenging independence of the judiciary, etc. Israel was already a nation almost at civil war. The Israeli president said there's a real risk of civil war in Israel. That risk hasn't gone away. So all these generals who are articulating a military posture are doing so on a foundation of political support that is very shaky. Benjamin Netanyahu may not survive as the prime minister much longer. His government may collapse. And when it collapses, the generals, the minister of defense and the chief of staff, they are gone too, because they are disgraced. And now there will be a new political leadership that will redefine what military, how they want the war to go. So first of all, we have to dismiss all long-term projections by the Israeli leadership, because it's premised on
they're not going to stay there.
It's premised on, unrealistic things. Two, this war is unsustainable politically, globally. We already see the world's reached the breaking point in terms of the number of Palestinian dead. And so there are political pressures. We see the United States already saying that we are going to be pushing very aggressively for a ceasefire. And once you have a ceasefire, you can't allow the war to resume. So it means that there will be a political solution. Hamas will be part of that political solution. That political solution will probably entail some sort of exchange of Israeli hostages for prisoners, and a recognition about the sanctity of the Al-Aqsa. And now Hamas just won the war. So remember, Israel has walked into a trap. They may have freedom of operation above ground, even though they don't. But below ground is a Hamas network of tunnels that have been prepared for up to 90 days of sustained combat. We're 30 days in, and Israel's already feeling the strain. 90 days in, I don't think this war is going to last 90 days. I think Israel will be politically defeated prior to that. The Israeli army, it's a big army. They're not going to suffer 300,000 dead. What they're going to suffer is the humiliation that comes from failing to achieve their objectives. Remember, the Israeli army promised Israel that they would destroy Hezbollah.
Yeah,
they would destroy Hezbollah in 2006.
And you couldn't do it.
They didn't. And they can't do it to Hamas right now either.
Okay, so we know now there's an exchange of that imminent, an exchange of prisoners, captives between Hamas and Israel. It seems like everybody agrees that that's gonna happen at one point, because that's what the whole world needs, the hostages. What's gonna happen after that? What will be the very first thing that's gonna happen after this? Will the new Israeli leadership, if this happens, are they gonna be okay to sit on the table with Hamas and tell them, okay, that's fine, you killed 1,400, we killed 10,000, that's enough, let's just talk about the Palestinian state? Or is it going to be a completely different thing? Will the Israeli people accept that Hamas was not eradicated?
Well, they have no choice. Just as they had to accept that Hezbollah wasn't eradicated in 2006. Israel and Hezbollah don't have direct negotiations, direct contact today. It's always done through an intermediary. Israel has ongoing active dialogue with the Palestinian Authority. Any Palestinian state must be, it's not just Gaza, it's the West Bank, it's everything. So I think what we're going to see is if a ceasefire comes in, if humanitarian goods come in, if prisoners are exchanged, that there won't be a resumption of the fighting. What will happen is that the negotiation for a new Palestinian state will take place between the Palestinian Authority, Israel, Hamas will advise the Palestinian Authority about and Hamas will have achieved tremendous credibility in the eyes of the Palestinian people, so much that the Palestinian Authority can't ignore them. So there won't be Hamas sitting down with Israel. It will be Hamas pressuring or making sure that their point of view is heard and acted on by the Palestinian Authority. But I think that negotiation will take place between the Palestinian Authority and Israel.
One last question. At that point, if that happens, in that scenario in the future, will the U.S. still condemn Hamas as a terrorist group, even though if it's sitting, advising indirectly negotiations that is officially accepted by the whole world?
I think as long as Hamas is Hamas, the U.S. politically will condemn it. But Hamas is smart. I can't dictate Hamas's future, but name changes are amazing things. And if Hamas becomes the Gazan Resistance
Fighters,
Council,
whatever,
becomes something different.
Council,
working with the Palestinian Authority as part of the Palestinian Authority, then we can't condemn it. So again, I don't know what the future is going to be, but I can say that the Hamas organization is not going to be defeated. They're going to be here for a long time. If there's a requirement for them to change their name to become legitimate, that's politics, man.
That's politics, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you very, 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 very much.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I want to preface this by saying that I'm not Muslim, I'm Jewish, but I've noticed something, and I'm sure a lot of Muslims have also noticed this, that through, this entire thing with Palestine, so many more people are learning about Islam, and so many more people are reading the Quran. I've read the Quran. I love the Quran. I think it's a beautiful piece of text. I think that it's wonderful, and it has so much incredible history in it, just like so many different spiritual texts and religious texts, but it just makes me laugh. Y'all are about to get a lot of converts. Y'all call them reverts though, right? That's really interesting. Like reverting to Islam. That's really interesting. That's an interesting concept to me. You're gonna have a lot of people turning to Islam soon. I've seen people be like, wow, this is really interesting. Honey, you're next. I want to preface this by...
Okay, so let us now talk to you about the Quran, all right? If you go to www.muhammad.com, Quran, Gaza _ edition PDF, you get your own beautiful Arabic and English and topics, so it will be step by step, one topic at a time. And this was translated to their mother tongue is the opposite language. So Arabic by Ahmed Darwish, who is a scholar from Azhar, and he was a consultant for Muhammad Ali Foundation, Chicago, and Khadijah, who is a poet from Bristol, UK. So now you can see how nice it is. It is a contemporary English, and it doesn't have the mistakes in thousand and thousand as free. So you see how everybody tell you his copy is the best, and really he is a second language. English is his second language, so I mean, no way he can be better than this one. This is rated 5 stars in Amazon Kindle, and also combined with, in another edition, 13,000 plus concordance words, which is glossary. Instead of you have the glossary numbers, page numbers, and the numbers of whatever there, you have the full verses and the reference of it. So you will have a topic and all its full verses, as if a research already made for you for something like 18,000 words. Okay. So now, Anne, she kindly recorded it too. All right. So here, if you go to like Muhammad.com and you go to Quran, Hadith, and Hadith, Hadith means prophetic statement, audio, you click on it, then you click on the Quran, so you will get that.
The Holy Quran, the audio translation of the meaning rendered into English, with for the first time approximately 2,000 subtitles by Sheikh Ahmed Darwish and Khadijah-Anne Stephens and Noor Khadijah of Allah.com, Muhammad.com, Mosque.com. Copyrighted 1984 to 2011 by the Darwish family. All rights are reserved. Please note, in the printed edition of this translation, pronouns whose first letter are capitalized refer to the Creator Allah. For example, the capitalization of the first letter in the words you, he, him, his, and own, while the capitalized first letter in pronouns such as our, ours, us, and we denote the greatness of Allah, not plurality. In this rendering of the meaning of the Quran with its English audio recording and subtitles, we decided to adopt the style of the Arabic reciters, who do not mention the verse numbers during their recitation. Instead, the number of the chapter and verse are mentioned following the subtitle. To ease the flow and understanding of some verses, explanatory words have been inserted between a set of brackets, and those brackets have been read. For example, you, bracket, alone, bracket, we worship. The Holy Quran, Chapter 1, the opener, Al-Fatiha, the greatest chapter in the Quran. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Most Merciful. Allah opens the Quran with words in praise of Himself. Chapter 1, verses 2 to 4. Praise be to Allah, Lord of the worlds, the Merciful, the Most Merciful, owner of the Day of Recompense. Regarding the supplication of believers to Allah, Chapter 1, verses 5 through 7, the Quran says, you, bracket, alone, bracket, we worship, and you, bracket, alone, bracket, we rely for help. Guide us to the straight path, the path of those whom you have favored, not those upon whom is the anger, nor the astray. Ameen. Bracket, please answer, bracket.
So, at the left here, you will see all the these topics, one after the other. So you click on any topic and you will hear and reading the English. So now you come and say, how about the Arabic? The Arabic, I will recommend to you only two people to hear them. One is called Minshawi, one called Abdul Basit from Egypt. And here is Minshawi for you. Okay, so now we will remind you again that muhammad.com/Quran _Gaza _edition PDF. You can get your own copy for free. All right. Avoid any other copies for sale or free because they are outdated and translated by only a guy who is maybe English his second language or Arabic his second language. In this case, he makes mistakes. For example, you will see the opener, the first chapter name, they will translate the opening. You will find things like worshipper, you translate slave or master, and Quran doesn't have that such usage. Allah is not in need for a slave or for slave or a servant. Allah is not He is not in need for a servant or a slave. Plus, Islam freed the slaves. Okay, so this is about that. So now, say after the Quran, if you go to the same place here and you look for the hadiths, you will have again, and Khadijah will read for you the hadith of the Prophet. What is the hadith of the Prophet? It's prophetic statement. The Prophet is spoken about one verse a day, average, mathematic average, and one prophetic statement a day, totaling the Quran over 23 years of his prophethood life. He was appointed as a prophet and messenger when he was 40 years old, and for 23 years you are getting this average, one a day. And this is also some of the archiving that whoever hears that verse of the day, he memorize it, and it will be very easy, because if you study any language, not alone it is your own mother tongue language, and somebody tell you one sentence a day, you will memorize it, no doubt. Okay, so she will tell you as such.
In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Most Merciful. Assalamu alaikum. The following is a brief introduction to our English translation and audio of 372 subjects of the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, praise and peace be upon him, compiled by Imam Nawawi and translated and presented by Ahmed Darwish and Khadijah Stephens and daughter Noor Khadijah of Allah.com, Muhammad.com, Mos.com. Copyrighted 1984 to 2011 by the Darwish family. Regarding the importance of intention, the Hadith tells us, I, Omar son of Al-Khattab, heard the Messenger of Allah, praise and peace be upon him, say, indeed, deeds are, judge, only by intention, and there is for everyone that which he intended. If one's migration is to Allah and His Messenger, then one's migration is to Allah and His Messenger. If one's migration is to seek the world, then one's migration is for that. If a man migrates for the sake of a woman and marries her, then his migration is that for which he migrated.
We are willing to drop anything and everything for the sake of Allah.
I think this is truly one of the messages from this week that has changed my life indelibly, truly and completely. I will never, ever, ever allow anyone at all to tell me about the Muslim people or Islam, because y'all's belief is beautiful. It's transcendent. You know, like, if this is the campaign to get nations to be Islamic, it's doing it. How y'all hold faith is with such an indomitable hope.
We are
by saying that I'm not Muslim, I'm Jewish, but I've noticed something, and I'm sure a lot of Muslims have also noticed this, that through, you know, this entire thing with Palestine, so many more people are learning about Islam, and so many more people are reading the Quran. I've read the Quran. I love the Quran. I think it's a beautiful piece of text. I think that it's wonderful, and it has so much incredible history in it, just like so many different spiritual texts and religious texts, but like, it just makes me laugh. Y'all are about to get a lot of converts. Y'all call them reverts though, right? That's really interesting. Like reverting to Islam. That's really interesting. That's an interesting concept to me. Yeah, you're gonna have a lot of people turning to Islam soon. I've seen people be like, wow, this is really interesting. Honey, you're next.
Okay, let me explain to you the situation here. Islam is based on three kind of parts put together, pillars. One is called Islam, which is Arabic word of surrender to God. So you say this Muslim, Islam, blah, 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 all this is surrendering, which you have to say, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and you believe in all other prophets, and so forth, okay? And with the seal of the prophets by Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon them all. So this makes you Muslim, and you kind of go to witness it in a masjid or something. But I feel this girl, she's a believer. Believer means you, in your heart, you already accept it. And this happened to Heracles. Please go onto our site and download the story of Heracles, emperor. He became a believer in his heart. So if you hear all this and you became a believer and you don't go and announce it, you are a believer, but you are not a Muslim. Muslim kind of like public environment, okay? Which it is very good for people who feel like their families or some office people give them hard time or become prejudiced against them. Then they just get into a believing status and pray secretly, okay? And this happened to many of the companions, by the way, in the time of the Prophet, that they decided not to announce. So they were kind of sitting with the unbeliever who are fighting the Prophet, but they don't fight him, but they kind of push them back. So this is called a believer, okay? Then the third one, it is completely 100% spiritual, called ihsan, which really that you read Quran, you pray a lot, you supplicate to Allah a lot, and you join, and your soul will start developing and become in a higher ranks of contemplation and content. And the leader who can teach you all this is Imam Ghazali. And if you go to Muhammad.com and click on English and go to Ghazali, you will learn a lot. Okay, so now I think we covered the Quran and the Hadith. Now I want to take you to something else we have, then we conclude. We have what is called the first Islamic chat. Our site was registered before Google, okay, in the time of Amazon. And we have a huge collection, shelves, like 300 plus English books shelves. We have Indonesian 200 plus and so forth. We have no competition, as a matter of fact, okay? Praise be to Allah. So now if you go to the chat, so you click on first Islamic chat and you search, say, for, say, Israel, for example, and you click English, since you are going to search in English, so you will get text about Israel, a lot of verses, okay? And it will go over all the Israeli good people and the Israeli bad people who are Zionists, which they are named the harm doer, okay? So anyhow, so this is, you can go and search in any language, really, all right? And you can search thousands and thousands of words, okay? If you search for something which is not in the Quran, because say ice cream, for example, if you search for ice cream, it will take you to another, it will give you ice, I-C-E will give you part of it, but no cream, so you have choice, for example, and so forth. But also will give you a link, it will give you link to another chat, which is like ChatGPT, for example, okay? So we don't want to waste time here now. So what I want to show you, finally, suppose you said, you know what, I want really to learn the words of Quran. I compiled 28% of the Quran unique words without repetition, and if you study that with your reading, you will be really in good shape, okay? So let us kind of go over it, okay?
Or anywhere in the UAE, check out.
So here you go. So back to Minshawi, he will say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, okay?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
with, for the first time,
Okay, so now, this is, by the way, Muhammad Ali books. You can download it for free. It's over 1 million downloaded. So here is that, word for word, okay? The Arabic, followed by the transliteration and the meaning of it in English. This is Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Alhamdu, Lillahi, Rabbi, Al-Alamina, Maliki, Yawmi, Ad-Dini. So this is, in a way, you will comprehend with this 3-4 reference I give you, you will comprehend the Quran better than even any Arab, okay? Because some Arabs, if you ask them, if they didn't study it, you will not know the meaning of a word. So coming back to, this will be like 8 hours lab. It goes over all the Quran from beginning to the end. This is the first 30 minutes, okay? So this is really all what I want to show you. I open like kind of Telegram groups if you are interested to study anything. by all means. We have biography of the Prophet, we have all kind of good stuff. Thank you very much for being patient so far, and Assalamu alaikum, shalom, peace be unto you.